So welcome back to GAA Fan TV and welcome to the 2022 Dublin Season Preview, the Dublin football preview ahead of the upcoming 2022 GAA season. And Dublin, look, let's not, beat around the bush. Last year, very disappointing. 2021, a tough defeat to take against Mayo, having been so good against Mayo for so long, having been beating Mayo consistently year in, year out, whether it was All-Ireland finals or semi-finals. Dublin seemed to always have Mayo's number going as far back as 2012. But last year, it had to end. It had to come to an end at some point. The 6 in a row had to come to an end. Dublin weren't going to always just be dominant and win all Irelands, despite maybe what we all hoped to happen. It was going to end, and it was Mayo the ones who put the nail in the Dublin coffin. I was delighted today to speak with Eamon Donoghue of the Irish Times. We preview the Dublin senior footballers, really going in depth into what went wrong for Dublin last year, in terms of not just that Mayo defeat, but some of the underwhelming performances as well. You think back to Wexford, you think back to Meath, some of the games in the league as well. Is it as bad as what many people are making it out to be? Maybe not, and certainly we discussed that in more detail. Some of the players opting out, such as Paul Mannion, Jack McCaffrey, the Stephen Cluxton situation as well, and what's going on there. And really just go in depth into Division 1 and how things might go for Dublin this year and whether they can win back to Sam Maguire, having lost the trophy last year. What new players could be coming into the team? Could we be seeing some of those under-20 players that were part of the under-20 side that made the All-Ireland final in both 2019 and 2020? And could we be seeing maybe some club players coming into the team as well, and maybe some fresh faces to try and improve Dublin's squad, which definitely was probably lacking a little bit of firepower coming off the bench last year. So yeah, I do hope you all very much enjoy these season previews. More previews to come. There'll be a Mayo season preview out next week. I know a lot of people have been asking for that one, so that will be coming next week, so stay tuned for that. And if you could leave a like, subscribe, would appreciate it. And let's get straight into it.
Well, nowadays you got to have that because
Okay, so I'm delighted to be joined here by Eamon Donoghue of the Irish Times to preview the Dublin senior footballers ahead of the 2022 GAA season that's just around the corner now. I suppose, Eamon, we're chatting off air there. How's yourself anyway? Any New Year's resolutions or any of that crack or anything going on? But how's life anyways?
Nothing crazy. I'm just coming back from a surgery myself on my knee, so I'm just trying to get that right so I can have a bit of a football season myself next year, as well as watching it to play a bit. I suppose last year was we got our seasons, and hopefully we can have the same this year. That'll be good. And last year's All Ireland was, for a Dublin point of view, it was changed, and then them not winning and not being so dominant. But for a neutral, I suppose it gave it a bit more excitement. So hoping for similarly exciting, and I suppose from your point of view, ending with a Dublin win.
Yeah, definitely. Does the Mayo defeat still linger in the background a little bit? Do you still think about it, sleepless nights, any of that crack, or have you managed to get over? I suppose for myself anyways, I know the defeat you still think about it from time to time when anytime GAA gets mentioned or there's this discussion or whatever. But I suppose I guess it's about putting it all right now in 2022.
Yeah, I think that Mayo win was they were due it. If you think of all the close games that could have went either way, that Dublin, obviously it's not luck, but Dublin got on the right end of it. They were due kind of for it to go their way, and them not seeing it out was kind of very typically Mayo. But Dublin, if Dublin see in 5 years' time, if that was the kind of just the 1 year that kind of Dublin needed to kind of click them back into gear again and kind of push them back to the levels they were at before, then I'm sure that they'll take 1 year, but it's very hard to maintain them standards year in, year out. It was inevitable that at some stage it was going to be, and I think they were kind of way off their standard for the whole season, and they were still grinding it out. And I think in one essence, once you saw a perspective, but you can look at that in one way of it's a credit to the team that they were still, they looked ready to be beaten, and they still, it still took an almighty effort for them to go down, So, and they could have very easily, beaten Mayo once they won All Ireland, playing at way off where they should be.
Yeah, that was the thing, wasn't it? Because even, it went down to injury time, obviously, when we gave away that free and Robert Henley scores it. And he missed the first one, which, there was carry on going on behind him that he didn't know about. And obviously he gets to take it again, puts it over the bar. So maybe in some ways it's probably not as bad as maybe what some people are making it out to be. I mean, who knows how we would have got on against Tyrone. Maybe Dublin would have won that game, maybe not, given, I suppose, how they performed in 2022 in general. But like, maybe there is probably a lot of people jumping on the bandwagon a little bit after that defeat without looking at the overall big picture.
Yeah. Well, like, the expectations are so high now in Dublin that, like when your expectations are so high, it's like you go to the new camp now and the fans not even there and they're booing them because them people have grown up with these expectations. But like in reality, like, it's still a huge effort every year to win All Ireland for all of those Dublin teams, and they still were very, very close to being there. Like, it was still a very close game against Mayo. I think that, like, if Mayo had gone on to win the All Ireland, it would have, wouldn't have seemed as bad. But like, when you're beaten by a team and then got beaten, it kind of seems as if you're a long way off. But like, Dublin, even in Leinster, they were struggling at parts. Like, I don't think they were just kind of their own biggest enemy last year. Like, and if they don't need to change anything necessarily to beat any opposition who have come and been better than them. They just need to get their own house in order, and back to their own standards. And if they're at their own standards, that's still ahead of anyone else, except for the only team who really will challenge them at that is Kerry. Like, and Kerry aren't at their own standards either. Like, so last year for me was, like, I know a lot. I've believed this. A lot of people disagree. Like, I thought the standard of play in that All Ireland final was, and it just throughout the year was way off of previous years. And yeah, like, while Dublin winning has been kind of, quite, hasn't been as exciting for neutrals or whatever. Like, it's still, we still kind of get a couple of really good games every year where the standard is just outrageously good. And I think without Dublin in your final and without Dublin being as good as they were, just the whole product wasn't as good.
Yeah, it's a strange one with Dublin, isn't it? Because their performance in general throughout 2021, except for the league, I thought the league very, very impressive. And even in that Kerry game, like, showed a lot of quality signs, even in that draw, scoring 4 goals. But for whatever reason in the Leinster Championship, there did seem to be a notable drop off. And it seemed to start with that Wexford win. And at first, maybe you're putting it down to first game in Leinster, maybe outside of Croke Park, maybe just, I suppose, getting used to some players coming back into the team and whatnot. But as the year went on, it did become more and more notable against Meath and even against Kildare, and then obviously against Mayo as well. It seemed to be second half performances where the performance levels seemed to drop. Any reason you think that is, or is it maybe just, people are probably looking for something there?
Well, I thought, first of all, like, Dublin, of their game management is so much. It's just so at such a high level at the moment that, like, they got so good at it that they almost kind of were able to win in such an efficient manner that they became almost like, so ingrained in that system of, like, efficiency, that kind of that extra gear that they hit, they never really blew anyone away. Like, so, when they come in and they just have their period where they will literally, stick the knife in and twist it, and then the efficiency comes. Like, I just think they were like an efficiency mode from the start, and that takes away, like, you have to remember, every team who play against Dublin are generally, even when they get hammered a lot of the time, they're playing their best, bring their best foot forward, they play their best, they're playing out of their skin. And if you give them any bit of life, like any bit of hope, like, you're asking for trouble. Like, and when you bring in that efficiency so early, like, in the games, so I think that their game management just got a bit out of control, like, in how much they were reliant on it. And I think the glaring thing there was this year, in terms of not closing games out, was that their finishers are starting to strong, like, as they were in the past, and the players that they brought into the squad, they weren't bringing the caliber of players on that they have been in the past. And you could question, and you could say, like, them players now, the more experience they get, they'll get up to that level. Or you could say that maybe they need to bring in new personnel who will be at that level. But that's up to Dessie and the management to decide, and they're seeing those guys training and everything. But there's no doubt that the finishers that were coming on were not to the level of what in the previous years. Like, you look the All Ireland final win the year before, and bringing on Brian Howard and Paul Mannion, like, that was not there. And it was really noticeable. So, like, are Dublin ever going to get that level of squad again where they have finishers who are of that absolute caliber coming in? you don't know. And then maybe they have to learn to win All Ireland with a slightly different style. But there's no doubt that their squad still is the best, like, you know. So it's within that team to find a way of doing it. But like before, for so many years, you had to beat Dublin twice. You had to beat them, and then when they bring on all of these subs who are easily good enough to be starting, then you have to beat them again, you know. So that wasn't there last year.
Yeah, it did seem like a lack of squad options, all right, like you said before, like bringing Colm and Ryan Basquel, who are two very good players for Dublin, but the same options didn't seem to be there. And it almost seems for Dublin that they're almost their own worst enemy at times. Like when you see players like Paul Mannion and Jack McCaffrey up to now Stephen Cluxton as well. Who knows what the crack's going to be with him in the future. And that just doesn't seem to be quite the same level coming through. Like there definitely is good players coming through, but they don't seem to be on the same wavelength as your likes of Con O'Callaghan, Cormac Costello, even Paddy Small when they all started to break through. Like the same level doesn't quite seem to be there.
Yeah, and like I said, Dublin have a team there. There's, you know, the amount of All Ireland medals and All Stars and Footballer of the Year trophies and medals that are in there in that squad. Like and the age profile and everything, like they easily have loads more in them. And like when you're looking at the players who are coming through for Dublin, you're seeing lots of really good players who more can do a job within the system, like, you know. But are you seeing like the players who are coming through who are going to lead the thing? Like, so say like when you had, you know, the really good Dublin teams with Jim McConnelly and Paul Flynn, and then you had like Kieran Kilkenny coming in, and you knew that, like, or Conor Callan coming in then next. Like, I don't see that next. But then again, when you look at like your Brian Fentons and we were saying off air, Bernard Brogan, and even before that, like there are obviously the players and Brian Howard who come in a bit more under the radar and they develop their role to such an extent that then they become that really high level player. So yeah, like it just, for Dublin, it definitely does look to me anyway that like it is, the well is drying up, but not in terms of quantity and not in terms of like quantity of really good players, but they're just not producing. They don't seem to be having this conveyor belt of like literal generational players coming through, which was inevitable that it was, you know, that it was going to stop at some stage. You were getting every 3 years somebody who's Footballer of the Year type quality player, you know. But I'm definitely seeing players like I thought that Peadar O'Cofaigh Byrne, like for instance, was a player in the middle of the field. I think like, you know, James McCarthy's obviously been excellent playing in the middle of the field, but like, you know, to free him back up in the half back line, you know, you're looking for that option midfield with Fenton, and like he looked like a player kind of real like contrast to Fenton, kind of a worker, does the simple things, really strong tackler, and yeah, someone like that, you know, you could add a lot to that team, like, you know. And you know, I thought Mark Lavin in the under-20s was brilliant with Lucan as well. He's got loads of talent. I thought he was really, really good player. I thought Kennedy with Bowden this year was brilliant in the club championship. Like, so there are players who can come in, slot in, do a job, and help the team. But as I said, I don't see a Conor Callaghan or a Kieran Kenny coming through, you know, which just makes it so much easier.
Yeah, because like they did reach the under-20 final back-to-back, 2 years back-to-back against both Cork and Galway. We didn't win either of those two finals, but there were plenty of players on show and there were plenty of players on display. And we've seen against Offaly, a few of those players made it into the team, like Mark Lavin, like you were saying before, you've Lorcan O'Dell in there, and Lee Gannon. I know in Whitehall is definitely a player that's you know, exciting a lot of Dublin fans, not just in football, but in hurling as well, because he could easily play both codes. So like there is players there, and it does seem that this year there's probably maybe a bit of pressure on Dessie to try and bring those players through and give them game time, especially in the league, because if he doesn't, and you keep relying on the same players, which were so successful for Dublin, like, don't get me wrong, but there probably is that element of probably needing to freshen it up a little bit, because we've seen when Jim Gavin was there, like Jim Gavin was fairly ruthless at times with even the most experienced players like Jerry McConnelly not getting into the team, and even Bernard Brogan towards the end of his career didn't even get a swan song. So I suppose there probably is maybe a bit of expectation for Dessie to be a bit ruthless this year and bring in some new players into the team. Yeah,
I think in fairness to Dessie though, like you've seen that first year, he showed that like he's obviously very aware of kind of the importance of keeping that conveyor belt, rather than winning that just this year, of keeping that conveyor belt coming. And he, like you've seen that with like him starting Paddy Small and Bugler, and like, you know, yeah, he's making like he brought them in instead of Howard and Mannion and them, and he was kind of very much aware of, just giving these young guys like very much, giving them the big experience and just keeping, as I said, the amount of players coming in and building up the experience. So I don't think he's afraid to do that. But as I said, I think that like last year, a lot of the guys who were coming in just weren't producing like to that extent. Like they're all really good players, and you see them in Dublin Club Championship, they're really good players, but like the difference between a good club player and a good county player, and like and then there's a big difference with them being a Dublin county player and then being a Dublin starter, and a really, like, the standards you're expecting of the guys is really high, and I don't think he got that out of them last year, but the team wasn't performing as well, so it's harder for these new guys to come in and do as well. But like, yeah, I thought Lee Gannon was brilliant in the under 20. I thought like he's very ferocious. He kind of brings something different, and Dublin in the past have always been very good for having that balance in their squad. Like for every kind of silky superstar they have a John Small and like a Johnny Cooper, like, and he's kind of very ferocious, and he brings something different, and he's pacey, and like there's no doubt that that will be their aim out of the league, would be to, like, can we add 4 guys to our 20, like, who are going to be really featuring all the time? Can we bring in 3 or 4 guys who are in contention for that 20, like, and hopefully 1 or 2 of them can be starting even, like, and if they can get that out of the league, it'll be a successful league, like, and they don't need any more. When I'm saying that, like, they're not producing the caliber that they were before, I'm talking more in, like, are Dublin going to be continuously winning All Irelands forever? Like, it does look like it's drying up a bit, but like in terms of the next couple of years, all they need is, geez, if they're even to get 1 or 2, like, that would be a really successful league. Like, because you have to think of how good you have to be to break into that 20. So if there's to get 1 or 2 new players to break into that, it'd be a really successful year for them. But like I said, you're looking for players who can fit in and do a role within that system, and that's why someone like Gannon, Padro, Coffey, Byrne. So I'm looking at those guys to kind of bring a particular type of attributes that maybe aren't there, where there's loads of really good players in the under 20s, but do they offer something that's not already there, coming through? Like, I don't know, like,
maybe the standard has just been set so high for Dublin, like maybe that's almost been the problem in some ways, like you were mentioning there, like not winning All Irelands forever, but I think that's nearly impossible in many ways, and it's probably, maybe at one point, maybe for a lot of Dublin fans or supporters or whatever, maybe they felt that was going to be the case, because it did, 6 in a row has never been done before at senior men's level, and it's quite an extraordinary achievement. So maybe that's kind of the issue as well, with a lot of the players already in the team. Like, the bar has been set so high that you look at the under 20s and you're comparing those under 20s to the players that are on the senior team, rather than maybe we should just be looking at the under 20s in their own sort of light and looking at their own qualities rather than comparing them with the senior footballers, because we probably are talking about generational players, generational team. And as we were saying earlier, if some of those players were maybe trying to break through other county teams, they'd probably get straight into the starting 15.
Yeah. Oh, there's no doubt about it. Like, you go watch a Dublin Club Championship game and you'll pick out some players who are county standard, like, and they'd be on any other county team. But then at the same time, and I think, which is the genius in the Jim Gavins, the reason why Dublin have been so successful, it isn't just because they're producing all of these great players. Like, some of their best players aren't the guys who are standing out in club football. Like, you go out and watch Nafina, and like, Johnny Cooper's not superstar bro on the field. Like, he does what he does. The attributes he offers are phenomenal and very unique, and he brings that across to Dublin. Like, but he's not like, playing centre back and dominating the game and scoring 3 points, like, But there are guys who are doing that at club football, and then people will always be like, why isn't he playing for Dublin? But like, that doesn't come across into the system, and it doesn't transfer into the intercounty scene as much. Like, and the genius of Pat Gilroy initially was the one, I think, who kind of really started bringing that kind of mindset in, and then Jim Gavins went to an extreme, and then Dessie as well. Like, they're looking for players who can fit into the system and who can offer something different. And I think that's a weakness that you see in most intercounty teams, that just kind of pick the guy who does really well in the club championship and put him into the county team. Like, where in Dublin they're looking for that extra bit, and that's why kind of the players who I was mentioning, say, as I said again, Gannon, as you mentioned, and Padro, Coffey, Byrne, and these guys, they look like they've got something that could add to the system, something different. If they play, if Mayo, like in the past when Dublin would play against Mayo, like their best Bastic and Macaulay, like, we could play that game because they were strong around the middle. them lads are gone now, so they need to have those options, or a more a team against really strong forwards like Kerry. You've kind of got more defensive type backs. You bring in, you just play it up differently. You're playing against Tyrone, they're going to play their defensive system. You play your own way, and Dublin have been able to change. They've got so many aces up their sleeve, so when you're trying to pick who Dublin are going to bring through, you're almost going to have to put your mind into a Jim Gavin or a Pat Gilroy mind. And if we had Jim Gavin and Pat Gilroy minds and Dessie Farrells minds, we'd be managing these teams ourselves. So they're literally fantastic managers, and what they're looking at, I think, is very different to what we're thinking. And the players who we're expecting to kind of make these transitions, I don't think are going to be the ones who are going to be doing it. I think we'll be surprised. And because even with the club champs, even you're on with the Bascals and stuff, they've been fantastic. And they've played it, and they are really they'd be on any other county team. But the role that they do is that's kind of already been done by Kieran Kilkenny and Con and these guys. So what's the role that they offered and kind of coming on, which is what they're doing.
Yeah, and I suppose on the flip side of that as well, you've plenty of players that seem to be opting out and retiring for Dublin in the past couple of years. You've no Paul Mannion, no Jack McCaffrey. Stephen Cluxton looks like it's a retirement, but obviously that's not officially confirmed. He's either opted out or retired. I don't really know what's going on there at this point, to be honest. But there does, you've Rory O'Carroll, for example, who's not, could easily maybe come in there. He's not a part of Dublin senior footballers. So, do you think there's a reason for a lot of players opting out there, or is it maybe just a case that a lot of players are probably just getting older?
It's just the GAA, in so far as it's obviously such a massively consuming and demanding pursuit, and you're not getting paid for it. You've got to balance your life and your job and all of this, and especially to play inter-county, but not to mind to play for Dublin, and then to be constantly hard, and it's literally consuming your life year in, year out. And when you've actually achieved everything you can, what's the point in continuing to allow it to consume your life, unless that's literally what you want to be your life? And I suppose someone like Kieran Kilkenny wants it to be his life, Brian Fenton wants it to be his life, but Jack McCaffrey and Paul Mannion don't want it to be their life. They're willing for it to be for a while, and they won everything. That's kind of almost the negative of winning everything straight away. If they'd still had some lingering things that they wanted to achieve, they'd probably still be there, but they've literally achieved it all. So I don't think there's any other reason. It's and it opens the door to other guys, which I suppose is a blessing, because if them lads are still playing, there'd be even less really good players in Dublin who aren't going to get to wear a county jersey. So, but that's when people talk about Dublin and just how much stronger they are, and Colin O'Rourke and so split in Dublin and all this. That's the only thing that I kind of see any substance in. When people are, I'm not thinking of in terms of a competition being fair, and that's all nonsense as far as I'm concerned. But there are loads of really good players in Dublin don't get to wear a county jersey, and they would be in other counties, and that is hard. And the club football is so high, it's such a high standard, that there's players who are putting in a club commitment, which is as much as Division 3 and Division 4 counties, because the clubs are training that hard. So but I don't think so them lads aren't even old. Jack McCaffrey and Paul Mannion aren't even old, and but I just don't think, they just don't want GA to be consuming their life for their entire youth.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a fair point. All right. And the Stephen Cluxton saga as well, which is kind of, a bit of a mad one as well. I mean, he's either it's I understand maybe he doesn't want the fanfare around it. Maybe he doesn't want to come out and retire himself, but I feel nearly at this stage, maybe Dublin GAA should just put out a statement maybe on his behalf or something like that, and just say, look, he's retired, all the rest. And you see with the way life works, there'll probably be a couple of days where he'll get a lot of praise and all the rest, and maybe there'll be a lot of people probably trying to reach out to him for interviews, and maybe there'll be a lot of I suppose a lot of things at his door. But life moves on very quickly. But I feel the longer he sort of leaves this opting out and not actually retiring, that question mark is always still going to be there. And even next year, for example, that question mark will still be there again. So it's a hard one to actually know. You feel he has actually retired, but at the same time, you wouldn't be surprised if he was to come back next year or something, because there does seem to be no definitive answer here.
Yeah, I just think from it's very unusual. It's very unusual, and the kind of mentality that he has, and like say Johnny Cooper and these guys have, is like they're incredibly humble and incredibly like that group is everything to them. Like, you know, that Dublin group and the Dublin jersey is everything to them. Like, so the decision that he's making, I'd be pretty like he's making that decision because he thinks it's best for Dublin group. Probably thinks it's best for Evan Comerford not to kind of have the big kind of pressure of like, you know, finally being Cluxton's, you know, successor or whatever. Kind of let him just kind of quietly go about his business rather than kind of having the big. Because even like the way media works, like the minute the Cluxton retires, there'll be loads of stuff about him, and the next thing will be like, who's his replacement? And you know, there will be more of a scope on Comerford, you know, than when there's a bit of uncertainty, it just kind of goes in. But as you said, that uncertainty can bring its own problems, you know. So I don't think there's any. I think that he's making the decision because of he thinks it's best for his teammates or his old teammates. But yeah, is it the right one? I don't know. Like, I don't think it'd be the difference between Dublin winning or losing, but for media, it would be nice for him just to kind of bring a bit of clarity to it. But I definitely do think that like that personality that him and, you know, that core group has, like they're so steely focused on the group, and like, you know, like cult like almost like, and he's definitely not making that decision because of anything other than he thinks is the best thing for that group of players that he was obviously so loyal to.
Yeah, and I suppose on the flip side of that, like he probably owes nothing to anyone really. After all, he's given to Dublin GAA down the years, like we were talking about the commitments and all the rest, and you know, he's probably someone who's committed more than anyone really for Dublin GAA. So I suppose on the flip side of that, you know, he really does. You know, he owes nothing to anyone really.
No, and you know what, it really does go to show that like how you know, like there's that period where like, you know, he kind of didn't do any media, he didn't speak to media, and kind of really blocked everything out, kind of did his own thing. And some people are kind of like, how much of that is kind of, you know, him forcing it himself, like, or whatever. But like we're seeing now, even when he's retired, like he did literally, that's just him, like, you know, that's the decision that he made whatever point in his career that he wanted to kind of just, you know, be away from all of that drama and away from, you know, he didn't want that to be a part of his football. Like he just wanted to come in, play, be a part of the group, win, succeed, and everything outside is external. Like, and now even when he's stepping away, he's staying true to that. Like, which you have to respect. Like, yeah, because he's staying. Like I always kind of was the belief that like, geez, he's very smart when he retires. Like he's going to be in demand for everything because no one's actually really heard him speak. Like, but yeah, no more than say Kieran MacDonald, who was similar. They've stayed true to it. Like he's retired. He isn't even retired. He's just stepped away, and he's not even, doesn't want any, you know, that's who he is, and he's been true to himself the whole way through this. Like, and yeah, like the strength of that Dublin core group is, you know, their kind of mentality and how close they are. Even here with Paul Mannion, his interview there last week when he was talking about, you know, that he's some of his best friends are on that Dublin squad, but like he has no really relationship with them now because he's not playing. Like, and that's kind of that, as I said, it's quite cult like, you know, when they're together, but that's, you know, especially in the GA, that's kind of what it takes to be successful.
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
it's an interesting one with Cluxton, all right, because like he was captain obviously for quite a long time there. Could you ever see him going to coaching or anything like that, do you think? Or maybe because I suppose we haven't really seen him too much media wise, and maybe one would assume maybe, you know, he'd be too shy or he wouldn't maybe be going for that. But what do you think? Could you see him maybe as like a coach in the background or something like that? Maybe like a Paul Kinnerk kind of type role for Limerick or something to that effect?
Yeah, you wouldn't know. Again, like if he did, I think it would be if he thought that he had something to offer to Dublin GA, like Dublin football. Like, again, I like we all have egos, but like I think them lads have kind of really done their best to try and remove that. Like the likes of him and Cooper and these guys, the leadership group there, have really done their best to try and remove like the ego from their decision making. And like I don't think he'd be coming back because like he wants to be leading the ship and he wants to be a manager. It'd be like if he thinks he has something to offer, he would. It's just so hard to second guess. Like I don't think anyone would second guess like what's happened with him stepping away. Like obviously everyone every year is anticipating will he retire or not. For him to literally do what he's done, so you can't guess anything he's going to do after that. Like, but the way he thinks of the game and the way that, yeah, he completely revolutionised Gaelic football through his restarts. Yeah, he definitely obviously has a very analytical mind, and whether that would come across as a manager, I think as a manager, you need to be a really good delegator and communicator and stuff. So I don't know what he's like in terms of that. But in terms of being involved in the setup and having a role, geez, he'd have so much to offer, even just with goalkeepers, and helping the backs and helping their movement, even for restarts alone, which is so important to the modern game. He'd have so much to offer. So, and he's clearly an innovator as well. So, and then just for standards, he's one of the people who drove the standards. I remember being in DCU and we were in college there and seeing them doing their running, he was up there, as the goalie, So, yeah, he definitely has. I definitely think he'd have something to offer, but whether he wants to or not, I don't know.
As for Dessie Farrell, then I suppose when we seen Dublin get beat by Mayo, maybe the standards have been set so high in terms of winning 6 in a row. You did see some people saying, is Dessie the right man? And I think with a lot of county teams, sometimes even when Kerry lost that year to Cork there in 2020, you've seen a lot of rumour mills about, player revolts and maybe players aren't happy with the management. And we've seen some rumours with Dessie Farrell in terms of maybe some players aren't happy with the training methods. And you had obviously that training breach at the start of the year, and maybe some players weren't too happy with that. Where would be your thinking on that? Is that all just rumours, or could you see any substance to it?
Well, there's definitely players who probably aren't happy, with being played and not being played, or not being played in positions. But that's always the case, isn't it? I remember you're hearing the rumours of Macaulay and these boys not being happy when Jim Gavin wasn't playing them. There's always someone's not going to be happy. It's kind of inevitable, isn't it? And you're just trying to kind of manage that. That's literally the job, to try and manage the people who are unhappy and try and still get a job out of them, which Jim Gavin did. And but every player wants to play, and every player wants to play in a particular position, except for some unique guys who, as I said, Dublin are lucky enough to have a few who are literally just so remove the ego from their process. But the majority of people in that squad just want to play and want to win and want to play where they want to play. And yeah, so he's going to have to balance that. But the training breach, I think the majority of GA players at the time just wanted to train, and they were doing bits and bobs anyway. So I can't imagine that having been an issue within the squad. I'd say they would have done it themselves anyway. But definitely as a change, I think he was with so many of these players when they were younger coming through, and when they won that first All-Ireland, I think it was kind of almost a surprise to us how when he first came in that first year, how much the players kind of already respected him because of his role in the early parts of the whole system, which has come to be and yeah, he's a very good manager, but he's different and he's bringing different things. And yeah, you're living after Jim Gavin, it's incredibly high standards to try and fill in. But I don't see any standout candidate, especially within Dublin, of anyone who would have his caliber or his achievements coming through, underage, and now he's won one of his 2 All-Irelands. And so yeah, I don't think there's any reason to question him or doubt him. Maybe if in 2 more years' time, if they haven't won 2 more All-Irelands, then you could start to say geez, give someone else a go. But there's no obvious candidate. And yeah, last year was very hard. He's coming in as Dublin manager. You have to remember that it's 2 really hard years to come in and fill in after Jim. So, and there are these players opting out, and you have a team that have won 6 in a row and lost. The manager's gone, and you're trying to keep them motivated. And in one hand, it's the easiest job in the world to take because you have a team that are ready to win All Ireland. But on the other hand, it's just the hardest. So, from my experience talking to Dessie and stuff like that, he just seems a very, very well organized manager, and a lot of experience, and the players kind of respect him, and he's a nice guy, and he seems very honest, and he's all about culture. And yeah, so I couldn't imagine there being too much unrest in the camp.
How will they treat the league then, do you think? Do you think Dublin will go strong enough in the league? We've seen last year, they went strong enough in the 3 games and the 1 league semi-final that they had. Obviously, it was a little bit different back then because it was shorter games, and maybe there was no pre-season. Obviously, straight knockout in the Leinster Championship, so maybe Dublin wanted to get their top 15, I suppose, straight up to the level. But what do you think this year? Could there be changes in the team in terms of rotation throughout the league, or could you see Dublin maybe go hell for leather, as strong as anyone, and maybe push for winning what would be a first league title since 2018?
I think there'll be a mixture. I think he'll try and keep the main guys getting them game time, because they obviously need to play as well. And and then giving new guys a run. That's generally what he's done throughout the league. I thought it was interesting, even with the Upper Ireland Cup, that like, I know it's different times and stuff like that, but like in the past, you've seen kind of Dublin, you know, putting out an entire Upper Ireland Cup squad, or even with a different management. Like, I know they're not coming back off the back of an All-Ireland where they're going on holiday or whatever, but like you still seeing Kilkenny and Scully and Merchant involved. And yeah, I think he'll mix it up. Like, the lads who need the game time, they'll get it. The guys who need the rest kind of will get as much as he can give them, and then he'll just try and play as many new players as possible. Like, but I wouldn't imagine a team like that went out against Offaly the last day would be playing league games. But I think it'd be just a mix and match. Like, you know, every game could be 3 or 4 guys to get a go. In his first year, Dessie, even in the championship, like, he kind of was dropping in 1 or 2 in every Leinster championship game, 1 or 2 kind of new guys, and until he kind of found, you know, the new guys we wanted to properly feature. Like, so Dublin have that even as well. And the Leinster championship is pretty much a league for them as well. There's no real challenge in there in Leinster. Like, so you've got your league and you've got your Leinster championship to try and get ready for Ireland semi-final. And they failed that last year. They got caught in that first big test. So this year they kind of, you know, need to push on a bit more, but it's not like they're a million miles off.
Yeah, and imagine a bit of pressure then going into that Armagh game, because I was looking at the fixtures there, and after Armagh, it's Kerry away and then Mayo at home. So, like, if it was to go wrong against Armagh, there was to be a tough result there, then all of a sudden there's a lot of pressure going away to Kerry and home to Mayo, and you wouldn't want a situation where Dublin are suddenly, you know, looking at the bottom of the division and thinking, right, we might be in a bit of a fight to stay up here. So I'd imagine maybe a bit of pressure going into that first game.
Yeah, the league system makes for that. It definitely does. But like, yeah, they'll have no problem beating Armagh. With all due respect to Armagh, like, you know, there's some really good individuals, but like, that's not going to be a problem. Kerry will be all guns blazing in that league game. We expect a big clash, a big challenge there. Like, in Dublin, they've even been at their best, and Kerry will challenge them in the league game and they bring them down there. And then, yeah, Mayo, I'd imagine, would be trying loads of guys out. It's generally what James Horan does in the league. He plays a lot of new people. He doesn't really overly worry about hello?
Yeah, I think I might have lost you there briefly, but I have you back now.
You there for a second. Yeah, on the face of it, it looks like it could be very tricky and it could go downhill very quickly. But like, the Armagh win is that they'll definitely win that Armagh game. They'll have a challenge against Kerry and be very confident of them beating Mayo. Like, so, the big challenge there would be the Kerry game. That's going to be the big challenge. Like, he'll put out a stronger team in that game, and you know, that'll be, in a lot of ways, that'll be their biggest test before an All-Ireland semi-final. That's the reality of it. Like, in terms of standard, Kerry put out a strong team. That'll be the biggest test that they'll face, unless they maybe get to a league final, you know, like, but that'll be the biggest test they'll face. And in terms of quality of opposition, and but the Armagh game, no, like, it's like this. Even you look at in the provincial games, like, the way the game has gone, you know, like, them upsets just don't happen anymore. Like a Mayo on their day can beat Dublin if Dublin aren't at it. Kerry could. You know, you've got Tyrone, Donegal, but like, beyond that, like, them teams just have no chance of beating Dublin. Like, the same way, you know, a Division 4 team isn't going to beat, you know, a division like, you know, Galway aren't, like, in the past, Galway could lose to Sligo or Leitrim. It's just not going to happen now. Like, you know, it just doesn't happen now at the moment, unless one of those counties come up, like what you've seen with Derry or one of those last year, and they come up themselves and rise their levels massively. But them upsets just don't happen. The way the game is, the way the teams are, just literally just at different levels now. Armagh are not going to beat Dublin, like, you know, unless they do, and then you can replay that. But they're not going to. That's how I see it anyway. There's certain results which are just not going to go. The way the game of Gaelic football has gone, when these teams are so much stronger in their condition and just their game management, and the way, especially Dublin's game management, you know, they just suffocate those teams, like, absolutely suffocate them. So yeah, the big challenge in the league would be how they get on against Kerry.
Yeah, and I suppose it would be a first time in Croke Park for a lot of those Armagh lads as well. So it'll definitely be a big step up, I suppose, from what they're used to. looking at Kilmacud Crokes, I mean, do you think there could be many players from, I suppose, what they've achieved this year, obviously in the semi-finals of the All Ireland series now, and we'll see if they can make the final and progress on from there. But could you see many of those players maybe coming into the Dublin team later in the year, later in the league, or potentially maybe in time for the Leinster Championship?
Yeah, well, like their squad is very strong. They've got like 2 or 3 guys on the squad who are being looked at by Dublin over recent years, and they're not even starting for them. You know, like Rory O'Carroll and Paul Mannion are obviously 2 of their main players. Even though Paul's got the injury now, and you know they're probably not going to be in this year out of choice. You know, when Rory came back initially, it kind of took him a while, but he seems to be back to his best, especially on the last game. I thought Dan O'Brien was very good. Thought he looked very good there, and like he's been looked at before. He's got a lot of pace, which is, you know, again, you're looking at these attributes or something that can be brought to the squad, and like he has that raw pace and adaptability in different roles and stuff like that. So yeah, like I think that Kilmacud's kind of overall strength is like the balance across their team. They've got so many good players, like rather than. And it's going to be hard for them to get in, because if they win on Ireland, like, you know, when are them lads going to get an opportunity? They'll have to come back in latter stages, and you know, hit, unless they're kind of in Dessie's plans already, they won't have much of a chance to prove that they're in, you know, to do something to prove it. Like, so it's kind of the you know, the negative of your club team going so well, like. But I'd imagine, like, I think they'll win the Club All Ireland, so I think they'll go all the way in it. And as I said, that'll be tricky for those guys.
In terms of Dublin, then, is the expectation then to win the All Ireland? Do you think in 2022, like that's the main aim, that's the main goal, and obviously it probably should be, given the fact that they won 6 All Irelands in a row. So is it really All Ireland, win the All Ireland, like that's the number one goal, and really, I suppose, the only main aim of 2022?
Yeah. Well, it has to be, like, you know, them lads have to be going for All Ireland. Like, geez, anything else would be no more than this year, like a massive disappointment. Like, that's pretty much like, you know, they'll want to pick up a league title if they can pick up a league title, and they'll want to get into the habit of winning straight away again. But like Leinster, obviously they'll have to do it with the system, you know, but All Ireland is what they're going for, like. And I think that the only team that I can see who will stop them is Kerry, like, you know. So that's the way I look at it. I think that the Ulster teams did really well last year. Kind of, I think Tyrone were kind of more adaptable than they had been in previous years under new management. They kind of offered a bit more. They played really well, and they rose to the occasion, especially against Kerry. And you know, I think against Mayo, you know, that Mayo didn't show up either, like. So, but I don't see like a situation where Ulster, those teams are going to take over or anything like in the past again. Like, I don't see that. I think 2 best teams are Dublin and Kerry, and after that you've Mayo, like, and that's how I see it anyway.
Any other teams there maybe you think that could make a step up, or I suppose maybe cause a shock or two this year?
Well, like Donegal, when you're looking at Tyrone and like Donegal, obviously were the team who were the top team in Ulster for a long time. So you're looking at Donegal thinking, could they step up? You're in Connacht, you're looking at Galway, because they've got the underage pedigree. You know, like, you're looking at these young lads coming through for Dublin. Like, Galway have had as many players under 21s and stuff like that. But they just don't look like it, really. They really don't. Like, for going on last year and the same setup again from this year, I don't see them kind of making them strides, even though they've got, as I said, they've got the personnel within the county and the talent, but there I don't see them doing it. So for me, the big 3 is Dublin, Kerry, Mayo, and then after that you've obviously got Tyrone, and then I think Donegal. You know, they're the teams that I'm seeing as top. I don't know if there's someone glaring that I'm missing out there, but for me, they're the top teams. Like Monaghan, I think, are a team who showed a lot of potential last year in coming, but they brought in some new players. They've got a lot of pace. With Donny Buckley involved, their tackling was very good. So yeah, they're quite strong as well. They'll probably be the next after that.
What's the verdict then, do you think? Is Sam coming back to the capital then, or could it be maybe going down south, maybe staying up north, or who knows, maybe making a long away trip down to Mayo or Connacht?
Yeah, I think that I have to see like what Jacko does with Kerry. Like I've been kind of tipping Kerry for a good while. Like even the year that before last, when Dublin bet them after a replay, like I was tipping Kerry all that year to win. Even before the drawn game, like I was tipping them to win that game, because I like the caliber of players they've got coming through is like they've got their generational group or cohort coming through now. But like there was a lot of shortages which have been shown, or a lot of weaknesses which are showing up over the last 2 years under Peter Keane's reign, and they have a new management now, so there's going to be a lot of changes, and it's just hard to know to judge them, or to say that they're like, you want to be very confident of a team before you say they're going to beat Dublin. So like when we're at this stage of the year where we don't know what Kerry are really going to offer, like I would go with Dublin, but like I'd still be like I want to see what Kerry have to offer before I go against them. And then say Mayo, they'll have Killian O'Connor back, will they? And it'd be a big strengthen for them. Like it'll strengthen them up a lot. And like James Horan, no doubt, will find a couple of players this year to strengthen them up even more. So yeah, and I love their style of play and their skill set and their tackle, and they're pushing up, and they really do change. They really do have their own, style. So you couldn't completely write them off, but I just feel like they win it last year. Like Jesus, when and they beat Dublin and they got to the final against our own. Like it's very hard to predict them winning it. Like.
Yeah, and I think the way it will work this time around, I think it'll be Dublin Kerry potentially in a semi-final. Well, Leinster are up against Munster anyway. Obviously, there'll be quarterfinals in there as well. So who knows? You could have a situation where Dublin end up playing Mayo and yet another All-Ireland final, or maybe something like that. But yeah. Look, listen, we'll wrap this up here anyway. Cheers, Eamon, for coming on. Appreciate your time as always. And yeah, I suppose best of luck for the new year, all the rest, and cheers for coming on.
No problem at all. Thanks for having me.